This story began in late December. It's customary in our office to have a pre-Christmas party. Not that it was too lively, rather dull, but it was always attended by the bosses, providing a good chance to talk to the higher-ups not easily accessible in the work routine. That year was no exception. The party, as always, was dull. I generally don't like parties, especially pretending to have fun. Most of the evening I hid in dark corners. Then my colleague, Sarah, responsible for ensuring everything needed is in the office, found me. I'm not sure how she manages it, but she's always cheerful. Never seen her irritated. She pulled me out of my hiding spot towards Linda and Mike. While we weren't very familiar given the dynamics of large companies where you don't even know everyone on your floor, we had crossed paths a couple of times and I felt comfortable with them. Besides, all I had to do was nod at the right places. Sarah spoke for all of us. Towards the end of the evening, a woman approached us, offering to draw cards for each of us, a prediction for the next year. She introduced herself as Jane, looking quite ordinary, a plain turtleneck, light hair tied back, no jewelry, no bright makeup. The most ordinary woman. If she had just walked by, I wouldn't have paid attention. Sarah and Mike were enthusiastic, and Linda and I decided not to spoil the festive atmosphere with our skepticism. Although I was surprised that they hired a fortune teller to entertain us this year, but apparently the tarot trend spares no one. Sarah was the first to draw cards. Jane shuffled the deck for a long time, then drew the 8 of Swords and 2 more cards I didn't remember. Jane remained silent for a while, apparently waiting for Sarah to coax her into explaining the meaning. Then she predicted imprisonment for Sarah, mentioning something about creativity and what Sarah would have during that time, but what stood out most was the mention of imprisonment. A rather grim prediction, and it was painful to watch Sarah, who, unlike me, poor thing, actually believed in all this. I wanted to tell Jane to stop scaring her, but Mike asked her to draw a prediction for him, and I decided not to create a scene. Jane drew 3 cards for Mike, and one of them was also the infamous 8 of Swords. You can never mistake that card. It depicts a girl with bound hands surrounded by swords. A very unpleasant image. Mike was predicted to be in confinement too. There was something about risk, but it was very vague. I disliked this prediction even more. It seemed like her style to frighten the gullible and make them come to her for sessions to avoid bad things. Jane formulated her predictions very vaguely. No concrete facts. I could also draw 3 cards and say, you may be lucky, but don't rely on luck, only on yourself. Next was my turn. I remember my cards vividly. The Tower, the 6 of Swords, and the same 8 of Swords. And then I felt uneasy. Understand me correctly, I still didn't believe in predictions. But when you're dealt cards with such imagery, it becomes unsettling. She looked at me attentively and said that the year for me would be challenging, with illness and losses, much sorrow, and of course, not without words about restricted freedom. It seemed she realized with me it wasn't so simple and decided to scare me more than the others. I decided that's it. I couldn't tolerate this charlatanism anymore and asked her not to intrude with her fantasies. She looked at me carefully, as if evaluating whether to say something else, but apparently understood that I wasn't easily impressed. However, before moving on to another group of people, she quietly mentioned that I was wrong not to believe, and advised me to be more careful with my health. I left the party in a good mood. I managed to greet and talk to everyone I needed to. Although, of course, the mood could have been better if not for the fortune teller. The prediction spoiled the party. I don't think anyone would enjoy being told only bad things for the next year, even though I don't believe in it. I soon forgot about the fortune teller and didn't think about it for a long time. The new year didn't start well for everyone. All the news was about COVID. We didn't know how to plan sales, and I had no time for any predictions. In March, things got really bad. Every day became worse with constant restrictions, continuous news about hospitalizations and deaths, and constant fear for loved ones. When the full lockdown hit and the TV scared us with the number of deaths in people's apartments and hospitals being overwhelmed, I suddenly remembered Jane and her prediction. I wanted to forget it, toss it out of my mind, but I couldn't. Every time I saw the news, I remembered what she predicted for me, illnesses and restrictions, and it drove me into panic. Throughout April, I was just panicking. I still didn't believe I would get sick, but my subconscious lived its own life and didn't want to be rational. Waves of panic rolled over me, even though I tried to convince myself that cards were just pictures. There's no fate, we created ourselves. But the fear didn't go away. Then they started lifting restrictions, and even though I understood that I still had a chance of getting sick, I somehow felt calmer. I could even go outside without a sense of panic. Gradually, life returned to its usual course. It became easier. Part of the office remained remote, including me, and that also reassured me. So I lived until November. There was just over a month left until the end of the year. They promised to start vaccination soon. I quietly chuckled at myself and how I panicked at the beginning of the year. I didn't get sick, I didn't go through any restrictions, I could breathe a sigh of relief. In early December, I suddenly felt unwell. Just yesterday, I was perfectly healthy. It turned out I had COVID, and it was a severe form, and I was sick for a very long time. Every day, I remembered Jane and her prediction. I was scared. What if I die? What if they can't save me and I become just a number on the screen? What if the cards really can predict fate? And she told the truth. I had never experienced so much fear of an illness when you don't know why it's hard to breathe, whether it's COVID or panic. I recovered only in February. I still don't smell properly. That dreadful winter is etched in my memory, not for Christmas cheer and gifts, but for fear and helplessness. I wouldn't want to go through something like that again. I still believe the cards are just cardboard with pictures, but I admit that sometimes, perhaps, someone can know something about the future.